Welcome back to another Gaming Memories video. Here we are taking a look at a game called WRC Arcade that was released in 2002 for the PlayStation 1. This was actually released more so to the later end of the PlayStation's life cycle. There's a lot more games that weren't being released as much, or big AAA games being released as much on the platform, because with the release of the PlayStation 2 at that time, that was actually getting a lot more preference. So there was a lot of big name titles, and even developers were going more so towards that console more so than the PlayStation 1. Now, they were still developing some really good games, but there wasn't as many at that time compared to what was going to be released on the PlayStation 2. So this year was released, and I remember actually my first experience with this, actually what it was I seen it in magazines and it actually looked pretty cool. And what actually happened was, it had been out actually a good while, and what happened was I actually bought the game. Actually, it was because I actually got it very cheap about a year later. I think I got it in 2003, and I actually bought it as a Christmas present for my youngest brother. At the time he was 12 going on 13, and he was mad into like racing games and rally games and stuff like that. So I said, right, I'll get this for him, and I have to say now he definitely enjoyed it. He was definitely really into it. And I have to say now, I actually played it myself. I will admit, compared to playing other racing games, I actually did struggle a little bit the first time I played it to get into it, because it felt very different. It didn't feel as refined as some other rally games I played. I remember playing the likes of the Colin McRae games, and they are without a doubt some of the best rally games I ever made, and they felt so well thought out and well laid out. This I definitely was more arcadey. The tracks were a lot wider, but it was actually a really good game. It actually, graphically, it does remind me of those games, even more so of Colin McRae Rally 2, because the cars in it at the time were pretty much the same type of cars that were being used in the World Rally Championship at that era, at that time. So this offered a unique challenge, and it was actually really enjoyable. It wasn't the easiest of games, I will admit, to play, but a lot of games like this, it was very similar to the likes of the V-Rally games in terms of how they played. And the handling characteristics could be a bit overwhelming at times, but once you actually mastered it, there was actually a really decent game here. Graphically, it was definitely one of the better looking games, I will admit, on the PlayStation, and it was actually quite good. And even now, as I'm recording this video, I've come back to playing it again after a few years, and I actually forgotten how good this game actually is. It is actually an enjoyable game, and when you get the hang of it, it is actually very enjoyable. You can actually make your way around the tracks with relative ease once you know how to get used to the handling physics of the cars, etc. The environments, you go around like different countries, Australia, New Zealand, Africa and so forth, even Germany and other countries, and the environments are actually very well laid out. There's really a lot of really nice detail in the graphics, and like I mentioned, it does remind me of previous rally games that I've actually played, which is nice. But again, there was more realistic rally style games that were being released from like through the WRC franchise on the PlayStation 2. So the PlayStation 1 didn't get a proper like official kind of simulation type game. Instead they got the arcade version, which is this here. But again, I found it to actually be quite enjoyable and actually really good. And it showed as well that the PlayStation at that time still had some life left in it, that they were still able to produce decent quality games, and that were quite enjoyable, and did still offer a unique challenge, and that still actually looked really good for its time. So as you can see here, you have a selection of top end cars from well known brands like Citroen, Skoda, Subaru, Mitsubishi, Ford, etc. And they were all cars that were unique to that time period in the World Rally Championship. So it actually fitted in well. So there was definitely always a car there that suited how you wanted to play or what you were more into. For me at that time, it was always a case where I'd always be driving either the Subaru Impreza or the Lancer or even Ford Focus, because they were always the ones I would usually always pick. But the other cars were equally as good as well, so there was definitely a car there for everybody. No, but I have to say now, this was actually quite an enjoyable game, and like I said, after picking it up after a few years of not playing it, I've forgotten how enjoyable this game actually is. And you can actually pick it up fairly easy and actually get into it after a few moments. Once you've had a few goes of it, you can actually get to grips with it fairly quickly. It isn't overly complicated compared to other racing games that were released before on the platform. This actually is quite an enjoyable experience, and again, it's more arcade, but it does have that proper rally-esque kind of vibe to it anyway, which is really cool. Again, the tracks are well laid out, there are a lot of detail in them, and overall the game just looks really nice in terms, and graphics, it does look really good. So I definitely recommend, if you're into your rally games, which I was back in the day as well, anything pretty much to do with cars, I was always playing it anyway. So this here is no different, so I highly recommend that you check this game out if you haven't done so. And again, this was released more towards the latter end of the PlayStation's life cycle, so it is a good opportunity to experience this as well, if you haven't done so already. So I highly recommend that you do check it out, because it's definitely a game that is worth sitting down and having a playthrough on it for sure. So what are your thoughts on WRC Arcade for the PlayStation 1? Did you actually have a chance to play it? Did you experience it? And if so, what did you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Make sure to let me know down in the comments below. So if you have enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like. Also subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be updated whenever I release a new video, as I am going to be exploring a lot more games like this here and sharing my thoughts and experiences with you guys. And as always, make sure to keep playing those classic games and enjoying them, and make sure to keep those gaming memories alive.